channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today's actually Thursday, since yesterday was New Year's Day. So happy New Year's, you guys. Hope you had a wonderful holiday. Mine was okay, as you can probably hear in my voice. I managed to come down with another cold, so I've been struggling with that just a little, but I did manage to finally get the project for today's video finished. I can hardly wait to show it to you guys. It turned out super cute, and without further ado, let's get to today's video. My project for today is this nightstand that I had in our storage unit. I don't even remember when I got this or how much I paid for it. It's been kicking around. It was in our garage for quite some time, and then we moved it into storage. And then as we were getting the storage unit cleaned out, I thought I'd grab it and get it done. So I am starting this project by giving it a really good bath using some Krud Kutter and just washing everything down really, really well. The great thing about DIY paint, which I'm going to be using on this piece, is that it doesn't require a lot of prep work before you start painting. You don't have to sand all the way down to raw wood. You just need to make sure that you're going over a nice clean surface. So that's what I'm doing here. Now, I do like to go back over my piece with some clean water once I'm done with the Krud Kutter, just to make sure that if there's any residue left behind by the Krud Kutter, that I clean that off as well. Once I had my little nightstand all nice and clean, I went ahead and removed the hardware from both of the drawers. And I also took out the Maker's Mark little placard off the side of the top drawer. I would reattach that later on when I'm finished. So here I am just taking off that hardware. And one of the things I realized as I was cleaning this is that it looked like someone at some point had added a weird stain to the top of this. I'm not really sure why, but it didn't match the rest of the piece. And you could honestly see where it had run down the side on one part of it. And I wasn't really sure if it was something that was going to cause a lot of bleed through or issues. So I made the decision to just go ahead and sand the top of this. Now, sometimes I will go ahead and stain the top of a piece if the wood is really nice and has a good grain. This was just builder grade material, so I went ahead and sanded it and prepped it for paint. Then I took my piece back inside, washed it all down again, and got it ready to start painting. Now, I already had kind of a vision in my head of what I wanted this piece to look like when I was done. I wanted it to have a very light, kind of feminine look to it, and I decided to go with DIY's Crinoline for my base color. This is a beautiful creamy white, and I just love it. It's probably one of my favorite colors by DIY. Now, since I am going over a relatively dark color with a pretty darn light color, it did take me a little over 2 coats of paint to completely cover this. Now, DIY paint is clay-based and it is very highly pigmented. However, when I go in with my second and my third coats, I always like to use a mister bottle to help thin the paint a little bit, and it helps keep it from sticking, and it also helps alleviate some of the brushstroke marks. So in all fairness, I am not really going over this with a really thick second coat. It's relatively thin, which is probably why I needed a little bit of a third coat just for good coverage. I did also go back over the drawer sides and inside with 3 coats of paint as well. I just wanted this to have a very sleek, clean finish when I was done with it. Here I am putting on that third and final coat of paint. Now, if you have been watching me for a while, you know I am not a big fan of brushstroke marks. So I will almost always go over my pieces, at least the flatter portions, with some sandpaper just to knock any of the brushstroke marks down as much as possible. So I am just using this handheld sander. I have got some really old 220 grit sandpaper in this, so it's not very rough at all. And I am just trying to smooth out the flat portions of my nightstand. Now, since this had quite a few little curved areas, I did go ahead and grab a little piece of 220 grit sandpaper. Again, this one is kind of old, and I just lightly sanded the curved areas just again to get rid of the brushstroke marks. Now, for those of you who do not like distressing, you could definitely have stopped here. However, I wanted this to have more of a vintage aged feel to it. And so I'm going in with a damp shop towel. And as I'm wiping off my sanding dust, I'm also doing a little bit of wet distressing. Now, the ability to wet distress a piece is definitely a bonus with the DIY paints. Since it can be reactivated with water, it makes this process pretty simple. And of course, wet distressing is a lot less messy than having to sand your piece. I ended up having to do my sanding indoors because, of course, the day I needed to get this done, it started to snow outside. And then, of course, I had to grab both of my drawers and do all of those same procedures with them. First, giving them a light sand to just remove brushstroke marks, and then going over the edges and doing just a little bit of wet distressing. I also wanted to make sure, since I was going to be putting transfers on the front of these, that I had washed them back down really, really well. Now, to really add some feminine details to this piece, I chose this transfer by Sloan called Flower Garland. This is a relatively large transfer set. It has two sheets that are this size. I went ahead and rolled the other sheet back up and put it in the tube because I knew I wasn't going to be using it. Then I began cutting out the pieces that I needed for this project. Now, I went ahead and measured the front of my drawers and figured out where I wanted to cut the design so that it was centered on both of my drawers. Once I had my design pieces cut out, I measured to make sure that I had them centered on the drawer from top to bottom and that they were really straight before I began applying them. Now, I like to just take a piece of the backer and fold it under really well and then place the first part of the transfer down just to kind of hold it in place as I remove the rest of that piece of backing. Then I begin rubbing the transfer down with the transfer stick and applying it across the front of my drawer. If you've never applied a transfer before, it's a relatively simple process. Once you peel that backing off and you've got your transfer stuck where you want it to be, you just begin rubbing it with that transfer stick and removing the piece of vellum slowly and carefully, making sure that you don't accidentally pull up any of the transfer with the vellum. If you do, you just want to lay it right back down and re-rub that spot until it's applied. The final step is burnishing your transfer, and you can use your fingers, but I would recommend using a piece of the vellum to just rub over your transfer to remove any air bubbles and ensure good adhesion. Then it was on to the second drawer where I used the same techniques, just folding back that piece of backing paper so that I could stick a portion of the transfer down to my drawer, then slowly removing the rest of the backing, and then taking that transfer stick and rubbing that transfer down while I peeled back the piece of vellum. Once I was finished with the fronts of the drawers, I went ahead and put them back into the nightstand to just see what it looked like all put together. And I decided that the nightstand itself needed a little bit of embellishment. With the drawers being the only thing with any pink on them, they just seemed kind of out of place. So I went back and I grabbed these long, narrow strips that I had cut off, and I applied one to the top curved portion of the nightstand, and then I applied the other one to the bottom curved portion of the nightstand. It just gave the whole thing a much more cohesive look. Now I ended up having some leftover pieces of transfer, and I decided to go ahead and apply those to the sides of my drawers. Now I realize they don't cover the entire side, but when the drawer's in the nightstand, you can't pull it out so far that you actually see the plain white portion of the drawer anyway. So these ended up being the perfect length. Once I had all of my transfers applied, I moved on to adding a liner to the bottoms of my drawers. For that, I'm using this tissue paper by Redesign with Prima called Cerulean Blooms 2. This is actually the last piece of this that I had, so unfortunately I do not have any available on my website. But I went ahead and measured the bottoms of my drawers, cut out my pieces to size, made sure my drawers were nice and clean, and then I'm using my stand-up steamer to steam out the wrinkles in the paper. This is a steamer I actually received as a gift. I had it in a closet for years before I pulled it out just for this purpose. When you get these papers, you definitely want to make sure and either use an iron or a steamer to get those wrinkles out before you apply. For my medium here, I'm using DIY's clear liquid patina, and I am just going in with a really good coat of that in one section of the drawer, and then I am going to lay my paper down and then smooth it out over that liquid patina, making sure that my paper is exactly where I want it before I move on. So here I am just kind of smoothing that out into the corners, just using my fingernail to make sure I have really good adhesion, especially along the edges. And once I have that starter strip down, I'm moving along the drawer bottom with another strip of that liquid patina. And then I just kind of use my brush to smooth the paper back down again. Then it's on to my very last strip of liquid patina, and I go ahead and smooth that paper the rest of the way down into the bottom of my drawer. Once my paper's laid down completely, I'm going to go over it with a good coat of liquid patina. You want a decent coat, making sure that it's an even coat, but with these thicker, more fibrous papers, I find that it requires a little bit more medium. Once my decoupage medium is completely dry, it's time to seal my paint. And I'm starting with the drawers here, and I like to go over my fibrous papers with a coat of wax as well. I know it's already sealed because of the liquid patina, but I find that the wax helps to lay the fibers down and just gives it a softer feel. So I go over the entire drawer inside and out with a coat of clear wax by DIY. I'm just applying that with a soft bristle brush, really using a little bit of elbow grease to work it down into the paint. And then I'm using a dry shop towel to simply wipe back any excess wax. I do the same procedure for both drawers, and then I move on to the body of my nightstand. And again, I'm just working my way around the entire piece, both sides, the front and the back, with one good coat of clear wax. And as I worked my way around to the front of my nightstand, you can see here that I go ahead and wax both of the wooden drawer slides. That will help ensure that my drawers slide very smoothly in and out in this little nightstand. The very last step is to repaint and apply the hardware. So I'm using a Rustoleum 2X metallic spray. I think this one's called Antique Bronze, and I'm just giving the hardware one good coat of that. Once I reapply this hardware, my little end table project will be finished. I love how it came together, and I really hope you guys do too. That's it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my little nightstand project, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then, of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of today's project. Just a quick reminder too, the paint and products you see me use can be purchased through me at my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. It's listed below in the description box as well. I carry DIY paint and products as well as Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, some Recycled Treasures decoupage papers, and some Redesign with Prima products. While we're on the subject of products too, I just want to remind you that for the month of January, Sweet Pickins Colored Juniper is on sale for 35% off. It is probably my favorite color by Sweet Pickins. I'm currently out on my website. However, I've got some coming. It should be here within the next few days. Also, Redesign with Prima is coming out with some beautiful new products, and as soon as I have my hands on them and have permission, of course, I will show you those. And Recycled is also coming out with some new decoupage papers for spring, so I can hardly show those to you, hardly wait to show those to you as well. For Saturday's video, it's going to be a little thrift haul. My husband and I went out on a junk run on Sunday, hit up some of our favorite haunts and found a few things, not a ton. And then for the following video for Wednesday, it will more than likely be either some DIYs for Valentine's Day or some more thrift flips. Anyway, I hope you'll join me back here for both of those. Until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And what is it today? Rest of your week and beginning of the weekend. And I will see you back here on Saturday for that thrift haul. Thank you guys so much for being here. And again, Happy New Year. Bye.